Hi, you're watching Bike Routes of Brum, a channel dedicated to finding safe cycle routes across Birmingham. In this video we'll be cycling from Stirchley to Herbert's Yard in Longbridge. In this route we'll be using the Rea Valley Route all the way down to Longbridge, and it should take about half an hour to cycle. Seeing as I've already filmed the route along the Rea Valley going north to the city centre, I thought it would be good to film it going south as well, and now that there's some life coming back to the trees, these greenways are suddenly a lot nicer to cycle around on. I've put a link to the route into the description below so you can download the GPX file for yourself. So we're starting in the centre of Stirchley and we're going to drop onto Pershore Road and take an immediate left onto Hazelwell Road. Now for those of you who've watched my previous video where we cycled from Stirchley to the city centre using the Rea Valley route, basically we went to the end of this road and we kind of turned left into the park. Instead we're going to go right this time and join the NCR5, the Rea Valley route, going south towards Longbridge. Now this bit's quite nice. The only thing I'd really have to say about this stretch is that the quality of the pavement here, as you can see, is just really not great. It's so bumpy. You can see there's parts where people have kind of skirted around these bumps, but it was a bit muddy for me, so I decided to just deal with it and bounce along. But I mean, they really need to look into repaving it. But we come to this toucan crossing over Ford House Lane and continue. You can see how close you are to the river along this bit. I've kind of put off doing this video until it's spring. I'm quite happy to do it because during the winter it's not the most appealing bit to cycle along. But once some life comes and it becomes a lot greener, then this is probably one of my favourite bits to cycle along all the way to Longbridge. But we're now going to drop down onto Dacre Close, don't really know how to pronounce it. And we're going to follow this up basically to get onto the Worcester Canal. Now I've put off filming on the canal until now. When I first started the channel I was kind of hesitant to use the canal. I wanted to find safer cycling routes along pavements and roads rather than using canals because they can be a bit dodgy at night, I always feel. But I've had a thought, and looking at some of the places that I've put on video and said, yeah, use this route, I can't see that the canal is any more dangerous than that. And, Birmingham has so many miles of canal that if I start saying, right, no canals, then it kind of really hampers what I can do. Particularly when I'm planning routes that maybe go from the north of Birmingham to the south. You've got the M6 that is a massive collar to stop us getting from north to south, and the canal is really the only way to get there that's not going through industrial estates. So I figure I'm going to start adding bits of canal into these routes where relevant, but I'm certainly not going to add all canal routes. But I think it just makes more sense to start using them. And this is part of the National Cycle Route 5. It's quite wide, as you can see, especially along this bit. You can easily fit 3 people abreast at this point. It's not like when you get closer to Bourneville and it's really, really tight. So I don't know. Thanks for listening to my little justification in my head of why I've started using canals. Now we're currently cycling along the Worcester to Birmingham Canal, or Birmingham to Worcester Canal, depending on how you want to phrase it. And it stretches all the way from the city centre to, you guessed it, Worcester. This bridge here is called the Avon Ring, and I think it looks really cool. It's a bit of a nightmare to cycle over because you can see here the steps it's very steep. But that bit of the canal then will go off to Stratford, and that eventually links up maybe with the Grand Union Canal. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. But we're coming off the canal now. See, we weren't on it that long. And we're entering Kings Norton playing fields. You can just see the centre of Kings Norton in the background for anyone who is vaguely interested. The guy who created Thomas the Tank was working in that very church when he came up with the idea. So, as Brummies, we can kind of take credit for Thomas the Tank, sort of. I don't think he ever wrote any of it when he was actually in Birmingham, but the thought was there. So I'm going to leap on it. But now we're coming to Pershaw Road South, where we cross over this Toucan crossing, and we now enter Kings Norton Park. Now, Kings Norton Park is probably, in my opinion, one of the nicer parks in South Birmingham. It's pretty well maintained. It does get a bit muddy in the winter, especially the bits by the river. And I've often seen people try and jump this little stream that's to the right of us and fall in, which is usually quite good for a laugh. It's got a skate park. It's got kind of big open spaces and an alright play park if you've got kids. And this stretch, when the flowers are actually out and the hedges actually are green, it's pretty nice. Now, if I was doing this on my own, I probably would have gone straight ahead there onto Witchell Road, and you can follow this down. And I'll show you where you would rejoin the Rea Valley Route later. It's usually a bit easier, but as I'm trying to stay on safe routes, we basically follow it down the edge of the park and into this little section. I couldn't find what the name of this park, I guess, is called. It just kind of runs parallel to Witchell Road, and it's nice to cycle along now that it's a bit greener. Like I said, Witchell Road runs parallel to this. It's not usually too busy and it's quite wide, so I've never really had any issues with cars bombing it past me or anything like that. And I only suggest going along there sometimes just because you cut out that long bit where you go down the side of the park and then join. This bit here can get a little bit muddy because it's quite dense forest, so I don't think it gets a lot of sunlight. So just bear in mind that you might get a bit splashed with mud. I think it is like tarmac below it, but it obviously hasn't been cleaned in so long that it's basically just turning into mud. Just something to bear in mind. But now we are coming to the end of this and coming up to Witchell Reservoir. Now we go around this corner, and the point where I said along Witchell Road that I'd probably rejoin the Rea Valley Route is just here. So where that car is, you turn in. But we're going to turn right, and the reservoir is just on your right there. And we're entering Kings Norton Nature Reserve. I don't know how much of the reservoir is actually left. I don't know if it's just kind of been consumed by wildlife. But this stretch is really, really nice to cycle along. It does make me feel quite lucky that this is fairly close to my house, and that we do have these greenways across Birmingham. That, I mean, it's in the middle of a city, and yet you've got these little pockets along the river where you can kind of forget that you are in the city. So like some of the other paths that I've talked about before, this can get a little bit muddy in the winter, but it's not usually too bad, and it's pretty well maintained, and they do actually kind of keep up with repairs on that bridge as well, which is always good to see. Now we're popping out onto Pope's Lane, and we're going to take a left and then rejoin the Rea Valley Route here. I think we're still in part of Kings Norton Nature Reserve. I'm not sure really where it starts and where it ends, but we're still following the river. I don't know if you can just about see it there on your right. Now we're actually just coming up to Witchell Road here, where the Rea Valley Route actually crosses it. So theoretically you could have just carried on all the way from Kings Norton Park and just joined here, but I think you'd agree it's much nicer to cycle through the nature reserve. I mean, one thing to kind of be aware, you've probably noticed it as we've been cycling along, but there aren't any lights along this path. It's the same as the Rea Valley Route going all the way back to into the city centre. But if you watched my last video about going to the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital, you would have heard me talk about how some politicians are thinking or trying to say that we should invest the £10 million that is meant to be going to building the cycle route all the way from the extending the A38 from Selly Oak all the way to Longbridge, and instead they should use it to build this or improve this. I'm under the impression that they can't put any lights along here because it's kind of a nature reserve and something to do with bats. I'm not really fully sure, but what my argument was in the last video really is that, one, this serves a completely different route that the A38 would, but also this isn't the most effective commuting route. Sometimes you just kind of want to be on roads and on proper cycle paths, whereas this, you're sharing it with dogs that, like that, kind of get in the way. I don't know. If you have an opinion on it, please leave a comment down below. But we're now going to turn left onto Middlemore Road here, and we're coming up probably to the only bit of the route that I don't really like, which is crossing this road here. Doesn't really have, this tiny little section doesn't really have a name. You've got Church Road there on your right, but we're crossing onto the station road, aptly named because Northfield train station is right in front of us there, that kind of little tower poking up, and you can see a train just going through. Now if you wanted to store your bike, I think there's something on the other side, and you can either get the lift there or cycle round, I suppose. I'm not too familiar with the train station itself. We come up to this little junction here. It's a 4-way set of lights, so you might have to wait a little bit, but we go under the railway on Mill Lane and follow this up now, where we're going to rejoin the Rea Valley Route onto this bit here and into this little forest. Now if anyone's really into foraging, as you can see, there's absolutely tons of wild garlic around here, so go ahead and pick it. And if you've got any recipes for things to do with it, I keep on meaning to pick some, but all I can see is wild garlic pesto. I was trying to find something a bit more exciting to do with it. So if you know any recipes that I could use that stuff for, then please let me know as well. Now, as I've said in multiple times in this video, this bit can get quite muddy as well, especially when it's been raining. So just bear that in mind and try and use a bike that's got mud guards on it if you really want to stay clean, because I've got splattered in the past. And now we're crossing over this little road. There's a ford there. If you wanted to clean your bike, I suppose you could go through that. And we're on to Rea Road. And this bit isn't too busy. I think it only really serves the housing estate, so there's not that many cars, and the road is it's got nice little speed bumps on, so nobody's going to absolutely bomb it past you. We're turning into this section of Rea Road, which is in the close, and we're going to rejoin the path here. Again, I don't know what this part of the park is called. I had a look on Google to see if I could find out, but I wasn't really sure. Didn't seem to have a name. But you can see that the river is just there on our left. Now I'm planning on ending this route at Herbert's Yard in Longbridge, as I thought it would be a nice kind of destination to end at. For those of you who haven't been to Herbert's Yard, I don't know what it is. It's basically an offshoot of Digbeth Dining Club. I think since they've left Digbeth, they've now got Herbert's Yard in Longbridge, and they've got Hockley Social Club over in Hockley by the Jewellery Quarter. This one opened, I think it was back in like 2022, I want to say. And do you know what? For what it is, it's pretty good. It's always quite busy, which is always good to see. Now we're turning left onto Tessel Lane, and we're going to cross over this little bridge over the river that they've now blocked off for cars. I had a little Google check to see when that actually happened, because I distinctly remember driving down here, maybe 10-15 years ago, and it looks like it was closed around 2019, and now it's just for people walking and cycling, which is quite nice. And guess what? You block off a road and the world hasn't collapsed. But we're going to take a left onto Longbridge Lane and come to the Toucan crossing outside of Longbridge train station, and hop over the road and then go back on ourselves down towards Longbridge High Street. This is all a multi-use footpath from what I can see, and nobody's ever shouted at me for cycling along here, so I'm pretty sure you can use it. And we're now going to take a left onto High Street. Now we're kind of in Longbridge town centre, I suppose. It's kind of a bit of a strange place because it's clearly just a retail park that they've tried to make a bit fancier, which, I mean, is better than a normal retail park. It's got a bit more greenery around it. Now, if you want to cycle to Herbert's Yard, then these bike racks right in front of us are basically the closest ones. For some strange reason, despite it being on a massive cycle route, there's no cycle parking at all at Herbert's Yard, and there's loads of room for it. I don't know why they haven't done it. So lock your bikes up over there, and then it's just a short walk over. I just decided to cycle around to show you how you would get there if you were going to cycle. and we just arrive at the front of Herbert's Yard, where we're going to end the video. Thanks again for watching the video. I hope that you found it useful. If you have any other ideas for alternate routes or want to mention anything that I've forgotten, please feel free to comment below. I try to upload these videos as much as I can, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any routes. Thanks again for watching.